Few weeks ago, French President Emmanuel Macron paid visit to Ethiopia. In his walking visit, President Emmanuel Macron held bilateral talks with Ethiopia's Prime Minister, His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed. The two leaders have discussed on ways of bolstering ties in the areas of investment, education, and culture. It is the second time President Emmanuel Macron has visited Ethiopia in 6 years. That shows the scale of the relationship between Ethiopia and France. My guest for today is French Ambassador to Ethiopia, Alexis Lamek. Stay tuned. Ambassador, thank you very much. It's an honor to have you in our show.
Welcome to the French Embassy. I'm very honored to see you today.
Like I said in the beginning, a few weeks ago, French President Emmanuel Macron was here in Ethiopia, and the President held bilateral talks with Ethiopia's Prime Minister, His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed. The two leaders discussed on a range of issues. So how fruitful was President Emmanuel Macron's visit to Ethiopia?
It was a very important visit, you know. First of all, the purpose was to see where we are after the previous visit 5 years ago. 5 years ago, a number of decisions had been taken. And the point of this visit was to see where we stand in this regard and what we do from now on. That's how actually the relation between two countries develops. Back in 2019, a decision had been taken indeed to renovate the National Palace. And that was the highlight of the visit of Emmanuel Macron last month. As you said, France has financially supported the renovation of the palace, but it has also we have also provided expertise from the French museums, the French national monuments, the French palace like the Palace of Versailles, and in order to make sure that this national landmark, the National Palace, the Jubilee Palace here in Addis Ababa, can actually be opened to a large audience, can be accessible to a large audience based on a scientific approach, scientific historical approach, so that the people of Ethiopia can better understand, know, grasp their heritage. And so that was the ambition, and I think it was a success. President Macron was very impressed by actually what we have done together, and so I was of course very impressed too by this achievement. You both have so this palace itself, but also a number of museums, including a museum of cars, which have been put in place, and I think it's a very impressive achievement. So that was the highlight of the visit of Emmanuel Macron. But discussion was not only about that. We discussed also issues such as education, and in particular French language in education. French language obviously is important for us, the French, but not just for us. It is currently spoken by more than 300 million people. It is the national language of close to 30 countries in the world, and of course it's a very important tool for any young person in Ethiopia or anywhere who wants to access, the international relation, the international business, etc. So our two leaders discussed ways of improving the French education in French, education of the French language here in this country. And so we have decided to work together and to see what we can do to make sure that French education or French teaching is more accessible to students here in this country, in primary or secondary schools. So that was also an important discussion that we had in this regard. And of course, we discussed also, the leaders discussed also the question of the ways France can accompany Ethiopia in its reform agenda. There is a very ambitious reform going on at this moment. I'm speaking about the economic reform, macroeconomic reform. And we have decided to accompany that, to support that, both through some budget support, but also more specifically when it comes to the modernization of the electric grid. Well, all that is going to be very important, for the sustainable development of this country. And so we would be very proud, of course. We will be very proud, of course, to do that. So you see, there was a large range of discussion between our two leaders, and paves the way, I would say, for the next years. Now we know what we have to do together, and I think it's a very exciting agenda.
All right. Given the long-standing relationship between France and Ethiopia, how do you rate the current state of the bilateral relationship between the two countries?
It's very dense. It has a very, yes, impressive density. Our relation actually touches upon many different types of activities. I mentioned culture earlier, and this question of heritage. As we said earlier, President Macron inaugurated, together with the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, the National Palace. But our cooperation does not stop there. You know, we've been working also when it comes to the churches of Lalibela, well-known Rock churches which are UNESCO World Heritage. Actually, just a few weeks before Emmanuel Macron was here, our foreign minister was here, and he signed an agreement with the Ethiopian authorities for a new program, you know, sustainable heritage in Ethiopia, which would be based on Lalibela but go beyond Lalibela on the you know, renovation, or I would say yes, support to the Ethiopian heritage. So that's a very important field of activity for us, and you know, we've been working for a long time already on such I would say history, heritage issues. One good example, of course, is the National Museum. We're also very proud of working together with the National Museum and the modernization, renewal of the paleontology section. You know that this has we have a strong history in common in this regard. It was a French Ethiopian-American team which discovered the fossil of Lucy. You know, you call her Dinknesh, I think, and which was at that time, you know, a scientific breakthrough. And that was exactly 50 years ago. So, well, for all these reasons, we are very much attached to this form of cooperation as well. So you see, science, culture is very at the center of our cooperation. Education also, we are privileged to have here a French, Ethiopian-French school, Lycée Gebre Mariam, on which we are focusing. We are very much, you know, I would say involved, and which is very important for us. Our two countries just signed an intergovernmental agreement regarding this lycée to put in place a system of scholarships, to make sure that this school, it's a school of excellence, it's a very good school, be also accessible for students based on their academic merits. So we are going to put a scholarship system in place, and that was, of course, a very important decision that we took together. So this is for these questions of education, which are also very important to us. But I could name many more, you know, issues on which we are working together: the economy, or the issues of finance, development. As we said, as I said earlier, we are currently supporting this homegrown macroeconomic reform program because we believe it's important for of course, for the development of this country. But we also very much involved also on the question of the restructuration of the Ethiopian debt, together with our Chinese friends. And I think this is important too, you know, to make sure that Ethiopia has access to international finance and hence can, you know, support its own economy.
Let me take you to the Horn of Africa, Mr. Ambassador. With a huge population and with a large market, Ethiopia is considered as an anchor state in the Horn of Africa. And with the volatile nature of the Horn of Africa, I think there needs to be an international cooperation. How French government is collaborating and working with Ethiopian government to foster regional stability and security in the Horn of Africa?
Well, that's a very important question. That's at the heart, I would say, of a diplomatic approach of this country. Yes, Ethiopia, of course, is a very important player in the region, both, I mean, diplomatically. As I said earlier, this country happens to host the headquarters of the African Union. It's a diplomatic capital of Africa, so it's a very important place. But Ethiopia as a state itself has involved lots of efforts, lots of resources for I would say, global stability. Ethiopia is a very important troop contributing country to peacekeeping operations, for example. But Ethiopia is also contributing to these African-led peace operations, like the one currently in Somalia, which is a very important one, since on our behalf, collectively, the African forces, including Ethiopian forces, are fighting against terrorist organizations. And so we all benefit from this very important involvement from Ethiopia. What we do, of course, is important matters too. France, as a member of the Security Council, supports, all these efforts in New York within the United Nations. But we are also providing some funding for this operation in Somalia that I mentioned earlier through the European Union, and so we are making sure that we accompany this process, because stability in the Horn of Africa is.
As you know, Mr. Ambassador, Ethiopia is the largest landlocked country in the world, meaning there is no country in the world which has a huge population like Ethiopia and doesn't have access to the sea. And recently, the people and government of Ethiopia are showing a great deal of enthusiasm to secure sea access. And in particular, the government of Ethiopia is making various efforts, diplomatic and peaceful efforts, to get sea access. How French government perceives such diplomatic and peaceful effort of the government?
Indeed, that's a very important point as well. Again, I'll come back to our experience as my experience as a European. We within Europe have a number of landlocked countries. France is not a landlocked country, but we have on our border a few of them, and this question, of course, is of key importance. I mean, making sure that countries can have access to the sea. And I think our European experience shows that actually these are questions that cannot be, how could I say, that can be dealt with, through international cooperation and regional integration. And I think that's the key. That's the moment. That's the way to address that and to address what is, yes, a very legitimate, concern and very legitimate request from on the side of Ethiopia. Emmanuel Macron, when he was here, actually mentioned that, and he emphasized that it's this question of access to the sea is a legitimate one, which of course has to be, as I said, addressed in the context of a peaceful dialogue, as you said, with the neighbors, and within of course, in the respect of national sovereignty of all the neighbors, and in respect with international law. But in this regard, this is a question that we discuss with the authorities of Ethiopia. And I think it's important indeed for this country to make sure that it can have I would say sustainable accesses to the sea indeed.
So in what way do you think the international community should support Ethiopia in its endeavor of securing sea access?
There are different ways, of supporting Ethiopia on this issue. First of all, the infrastructures, making sure that what currently exists, be it the road, the railway, is efficient and can be maximized, I would say, and its potential can be used at its best. So this is an issue on which we are currently discussing with the Ethiopian authorities. And of course, it's also part of the diplomatic dialogue that my country and others have with Ethiopia, making sure that this goes smoothly and in consultation with neighbors and in full respect of international law and the sovereignty of each of the neighbors. And in that sense, I think there is no reason for this not to work. And but we'll be together at that time to accompany, provide advice in this regard.
Alexis Lamek, French Ambassador to Ethiopia, thank you very much for your collaboration, and I hope I will see you in another show.
So yes, I'm looking forward to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.